rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. It's good to see y'all. It really is. Very, very good to see y'all. Yeah, I say y'all. I'm faking. That's just me, face it. I'm faking. Kind of like Kamala Harris does when she does interviews. She's just faking. That's just it. Oh, goodness. Well, it seems my rumblers are talking about a football game, I'm guessing. Florida versus Kentucky, supposedly, for this weekend. Anyway. Yeah, they're real on topic over there right now, let me just tell you. Now, you keep those Florida folks, are really into their football. Oh yeah. It's Amy says, hey Rick, are you putting on the accent for the crowd you are speaking to? Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I tell you right there, there ain't nothing better than a good sipping iced tea, except maybe just a little bit of some sipping whiskey. Anyway. All right. Enough of that. Let's get things started. Tonight we are going to have our Pledge of Allegiance led by the extremely wonderful Buddy Weiser. Man who's been around since time itself. I'm just kidding. All right, for everyone, please stand, remove your hats if you have them on. And make sure you put your hand over your heart, and let's let Buddy Weiser, the wise buddy, go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I hereby pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation under one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all her citizens. So help me God.
All right, and thank you very much, Buddy, for submitting that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition heard on the program, all you have to do is record yourself doing it, reciting it, in your style. And of course, once you get that audio file, make sure you take that audio file, attach it to an email, and send that email on over to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, folks, tonight's sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following three key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Check this thing out. It's got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are tear and water resistant. And look at that binding. No cheap glue here, folks. They stitched it all the way through. The leather and the pages contained within. It has a 100-year warranty against materials and workmanship defects, such that if anything goes wrong with this thing in that 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has proven that the internal words and information contained within will assist in gaining your civics badge in Scouts. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online and get yours today. Great stocking stuffer. Great stocking stuffer. Christmas is coming up. All right. And of course, I invite you to go and check them out today, and definitely make sure that you check out the rest of their offering, and I appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate of theirs. All right. So, Kamala Harris has been going around hitting all the shows, hitting everything she can, trying to get more exposure because we are less than 20 days from the election on November 5th. We are in the final stretches here, folks. They are coming around the backside corner, and they are going to be coming down into the final stretch of this race. And yeah, it's let's just say it's not going quite so well for Kamala Harris. In fact, it's not going so well that Joe Biden and Obama were at a funeral of, I believe it's Edith Kennedy, and they were furtively speaking to one another, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And yeah, so yes, definitely she is causing some bit of a ruckus. Now, I'm not going to claim this for 100% true, but the Post came out with the idea of using a lip reader to kind of see what they were saying. And apparently, at least one of the proposed translations presented to them was that Joe Biden was saying that he is stronger than she is. Don't know what that is. Don't know why. Honestly, I don't really care. All I know is that based on their body language, they are both very concerned about what's going on here inside the Democrat Party and Kamala Harris. Well, they kind of have a right to know, a right to be a little nervous. The reason being is because Kamala is bleeding, and I mean bleeding support that Democrats usually are, able to count on. Here's an example, yet another example of what I'm talking about. So here in Town Hall, title says, Adios, Michigan, Kamala fails to secure another key endorsement. Well, we already know that she didn't secure the endorsement of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, which of course is a union representing 300,000 of the people that quickly endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. Almost 60% of its membership, you'll recall that I talked about this, but almost 60% of its membership are actually voting for Donald Trump. They released those surveys, those internal surveys, to kind of show I think, a little bit of what's going on for it. Sorry, I'm being distracted. Here we go. Off the rails again. I'm just going to answer this really quick. Bonnie, talking to you. That might be a interesting question for Saturday. Hint, hint. Not to mention the fact that I actually do know a little bit about the Posse Comitatus Act. But anyway, I digress. As I said, we went off the rails. But, okay, back to Kamala and her and her union problem. So the second one, she couldn't clinch the endorsement of the International Association of Firefighters either. And that's the one that's, that was a move that apparently her campaign was sort of counting on, because they had a rally at a firehouse, which her campaign chose in anticipation of the IAFF blessing, but it never came. And in fact, even the local Michigan chapter went ahead and endorsed her, but then withdrew the endorsement based off of this piece in Politico. The Michigan Firefighters Union won't break ranks with its federal organization to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris, despite hopes from her campaign officials that she could still land the critical swing state union's backing. After 10 days of discussion, the Michigan Firefighters Union ultimately decided to stick with the International Association of Firefighters non-endorsement on October 3rd. That original decision blindsided Harris campaign officials who thought that they were close to clinching the coveted support. Matt Sayer, who heads the Michigan's Firefighters Union, told Politico, "We are following the IAFF recommendation on the presidential election. However, we have made it clear to our members that our executive board believes Harris is the best choice for supporting our labor issues." The Michigan Firefighter Union Board recently sent a letter to their members saying it believes Harris is the best choice for president. Harris campaign officials, including some who privately said they felt the firefighter union leaders misled them during the initial process, have been closely watching swing state level unions with the hope of at least a few will come out to publicly back her. But Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, are struggling to win over some key rank and file union members, especially from industrial male-heavy groups, part of a major political realignment away from the Democrat Party. And it goes on. So she's starting to lose some things with this. So anyway, Joe Concha, a person on X, said, "Adios, Michigan. She doesn't have the rank and file of the UAW either," which is right. So all of these unions that usually come out very quickly and back the Democrat nominee for president very quickly. They're usually very, very fast. And they typically, typically are quick to do so. And it's many of them that do so. So to have these typical Democrat backing organizations not backing her is, I think, a testimony to how much she is actually bleeding here. Okay. And so, anyway, they keep calling out, of course, that the election remains tight. I don't think it's as tight as what they keep talking about. I'm going to be honest with you. But that being the case, okay, that being the case, I just want you to understand something, that we've got to keep pushing. We can't allow things like this to cloud the fact that we are running a race and that we have to win. This is a must win. This is like we are, 7-10 in the fourth quarter with a minute left to go, and we're in the red zone. We can't just sit on the field goal, okay? We have to get the touchdown in order to win the game. And that's essentially where we're at right now in this race. Well, as you all know, she sat down for an interview on Fox News, the very first interview that she has done for the outlet. And also, not only that, but the very first interview where she actually went into what is considered unfriendly territory. Well, I watched it after the program last night, and I gotta tell you, it really, in my opinion, it really didn't go that well for Kamala Harris. Now, that being said, I expected her to, like, lock up and have, vapor lock and problems firing on all cylinders in her mind and getting stuck and like throwing out total nonsensical word salads. And all of that honestly didn't happen. She did throw out word salads, but they weren't completely nonsensical like you've seen in other places. And she didn't do any vapor lockups, meaning that she got stuck trying to look through her Rolodex in her mind of the latest lie that she was going to tell. That being said, she still ended up failing. And why? Well, Brett Baer, honestly, he wasn't that antagonistic. He wasn't, he really tried to work with her and tried to get her to answer questions. And he wasn't necessarily being, he wasn't being an asshole. And he wasn't even being a jerk. He was actually being fairly, argumentative, yes, because let's face it, again, this is not a friendly outlet to her. But that being the case, okay, she got mad. Oh my gosh, she was getting so upset and frustrated. And part of it was because of the fact that Brett Baer wasn't allowing her to go off on these tangents and not answering the question. He kept trying to get her to answer the question, which is what a good journalist will do. Now, that being said, you could say that it was a very contentious interview, and it was. But the thing about it is, though, is that she actually didn't really answer some of the questions. She had a couple answers, but they kind of didn't fit with stuff. And she just, I get the feeling that what she wanted out of this interview, and I think other people have kind of voiced this too, especially Brett Baer. I think she wanted to go in and wanted to essentially get a soundbite or a snapshot and a soundbite off of this. She wanted to get that I'm speaking moment out of Brett Baer. Okay. And I'm not exactly sure that he really helped her out to get it. Now, some of the questions that he did ask was pretty clear, was very clear, and definitely the tougher questions for her to answer. One of them being literally questioning, okay, you keep saying that Donald Trump is unhinged, that Donald Trump is unhealthy, that Donald Trump has, mental issues. When did you notice that Joe Biden had mental issues? And she completely went off the rails on that one. She started saying, well, Joe Biden's not in the race. Joe Biden's not on the ticket. And it's like, come on. And she also said prior to that, that she has sat with Joe Biden. She's been with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is fine. Joe Biden's making all kinds of decisions. He's doing this fantastic thing, you know, so on and so forth. And yeah. Well, her agenda going into it, which, by the way, I'm just going to let you know, this is probably going to be the agenda for the entire rest of the campaign. So over the next 18, 19 days, whatever it is, to get into the election cycle, all they are going to do is they are trying to make this race a referendum on Trump and Trump's failures. And Brett, to his credit, brought her out of it by basically saying, well, you know, she made a comment, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but she made a comment where she said that that basically for the last 10 years, the last decade, Trump's been campaigning. And he looked at her and he was like, well, yeah, but you've been in office for the last 3.5 years. And so, yeah, it's all they're going to do is they're going to try and do as much as they can. Again, I've been talking to Steven Stiles. I've mentioned this on this program. Trump is a mud monster. And Trump is one of those people, one of those types of people that when he jumps into the mud and rolls around in it, you throw more mud on him, and all that does is just make him stronger. Well, that's what they're trying to do. Is they're right now they are in such a desperation mode that the only thing that they have is, one, don't answer any questions whatsoever about your policies unless it's giving those platitudes. Then the next thing is to deflect everything toward Trump. And especially when it comes to things like the border. So she was asked about the immigration policies, and it was a legit question. It's like, hey, do you, knowing what you know now, back when you decided to rescind all of Trump's executive orders, the 79 or whatever executive orders that you decided to rescind to open up the border, do you have any regrets for that? And the first thing she said is, well, Trump killed this bill, this border bill. Okay, Kamala, I'm just going to tell you this right now. The president, meaning President Joe Biden, has the ability to shut down the border at any time for any group of people for any length of time that he or she wishes. And the reason being is because of the fact that it's already in the Immigration and Naturalization Act. It's already there. The president has plenary power to just shut down the border for anyone at any time for any given length of time. I've shown that to you on this program. You've seen it. It's clear as day in the law. It's like one of the few laws that you read and you're just like, well, yeah, that is exactly what it says. But she avoided the question, saying that Trump was cutting back on, or cutting away on needed, according to her, Congress needs to overhaul the immigration system. Well, no, Congress doesn't necessarily need to overhaul it. What we need to do is we need to slow down the intake of immigrants, in this case, or people who are trying to apply for asylum status, which the Biden-Harris campaign definitely didn't do. And we need to stem the flow so that we can actually handle it until Congress can make the decision and actually bolster up the immigration process. But the only way for that to happen is if you have a president who understands that they have the ability to shut the border, that they go ahead and shut the border, that they block people from coming in. You didn't do that. Now, Brett also asked her how many people she anticipates or she estimates have crossed the border under her administration. She wouldn't even answer. I'm guessing it's somewhere between 10 to 12 million. That's it. So, yeah, overall, it didn't go well for her. She had a couple of, interesting little things, but to sum it all up realistically, what ended up happening is she tried to filibuster, which, By the way, the Democrats are trying to get rid of the filibuster, but she filibustered and deflected and tried to essentially get Bear off track, so much so that she could come out looking like a rose, and it didn't work. Bear wasn't going to work. Bear, to his credit, whether you like him or not, to his credit, he didn't fall into the trap. And of course, it didn't help that, according to Brett Bear, she didn't show up until 5:15, when she was supposed to be there at 5. They also told, her handlers told Brett Bear that, oh, you're going to have 30 minutes with her. And then when they got there, they said, no, you're only going to have 20. And she ended up, showing up late. I think it was 5:16 to get the exact time that she showed up. And then, of course, and keep in mind, too, that as far as production is concerned, when you're producing a television, that is a television segment or whatever, that is not live like what I'm doing right now. Right now is live. You're seeing me, granted with a little bit of a delay, but you're seeing me live. If I screw up now and I say something that's completely off the cuff and off the rack and off the train tracks, there it is. It's there. But they didn't do that. They wanted to record it and then play it back during his show, which started at 6. And so, unfortunately, she showed up late. His producers, his videographers were sitting there going, man, geez, if she doesn't show up, we're not going to have the time to be able to do anything with this interview. For an example, put like little graphics and stuff up like they did during the interview. And then at the very end, and I don't know if anybody caught this if you were watching, but at the very end, he was saying, hey, I've got 3 or 4 people who are sitting here waving at me, telling me to end the interview. Well, the reason for that is because that was her handlers behind the scenes going, yeah, we're done. We're done. We're done. We quit. This is over. They're sitting there with their hands going, cut, cut, cut. We're done. So, yeah, it didn't go very well for her. That's just basically all I can say about the whole thing. Regardless of what the left-wing media is trying to purport and say, oh, yeah, she went in there. Now you see how she's going to handle bullies. She didn't handle a bully. Brett Bear was not bullying her. He was not bullying her. In fact, many times he would attempt to not necessarily interrupt her, but he would do it anyway because of the fact that she was going off on such a tangent, and he only had a small amount of time with her. And so he was trying to get questions and answers and more and more things to be answered in front of her. And in fact, Brett even said, he's like, look, I was expecting to sit down and have just a nice conversation with her. Yeah. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. And that was pretty evident. Well, she's been, as I've said, bleeding support from typical voter blocks. And so she attempted at one point to try and woo those folks. Here is one segment that she tried to woo, which is essentially the black males. Now, here's the problem, and I'm just going to point this out. This is Kamala Harris's Campaign X account that posted that the Harris Walls policy will create an opportunity agenda for black men. And she talks about the $1 million loans forgivable up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. Support education, training, and mentorship programs that lead to getting good paying jobs for black men, including pathways to become teachers. And I'm not going to read every point here, but they're basically focused on black men. Well, there's a bit of a problem. And by the way, if you think this is just a graphic and it's fake, here is directly from their directly from the campaign. Whoops, too far. Directly from the campaign here. Vice President Harris will deliver 4 black men. Wait, I thought she was supposed to be for everybody. I thought one of the critiques that she's had for Trump is that Trump wasn't for everybody. Trump was only for the rich, rich businesses and business owners and so on and so forth. And yet here she is trying to talk directly to black men. She will provide the tools to black men to build wealth, support their families, and lead their communities. Again, focused on black men, because that's where they are really, really bleeding support. There's only one problem with this, folks, and it's a big one. Right here in the Washington Examiner. Harris' plan to give forgivable loans to black men would collide with the Constitution. That's right. When you don't know the Constitution, folks, when you don't understand it, when you don't know what it says and some of the ramifications with doing certain things, you're going to end up running into it. And that's all these Democrats have been doing. Things like the whole student loan bailout, which, by the way, Biden just announced another big chunk that he's going to try. He's trying to buy votes. That's basically what he's trying to do. But here she's following right in his footsteps. And it's it's going to collide with the Constitution. It's going to collide with the Civil Rights Act. It's going to collide with the 14th Amendment and Equal Protections Clause. It's going to collide with all of that stuff. It does. Because that would be illegal. It's illegal. Not to mention the fact, and let's, again, talking about the student loans and these kind of loans and the PPP loan. Now, the PPP loans were done by Congress, okay? And they were forgiven by Congress. And Congress constitutionally has the power of the purse. They can do that. We don't have to like it, but they do have the constitutional power to go ahead and do that. However, the executive branch doesn't have the power of the purse. And anyone who is a student of the Constitution would understand that. She and Biden, obviously, are not. They don't know that at all. And so this entire thing, of course, is, again, trying to buy votes. That's all they are doing, is trying to buy votes. Well, okay, so her Fox News segment didn't go well. Pretty much everybody kind of knew that it probably wasn't going to go well because, I mean, again, let's face it, it is the one unfriendly place that she has actually gone into to have a interview at all. Well, sorry, had to take a drink there because my throat's getting dry. Anyway, well, she went to a bunch of friendly outlets. One of them was the interview with and did a town hall event with Charlemagne. Not going to say the rest of it. He is not. But anyway, before I move on, yes, Bonnie, they did. So far, the second round is being challenged in court, hasn't hit the Supreme Court yet. The first one did, went all the way to the Supreme Court, got kicked back and said, you can't do it under this program. And now they have a second one that's running through the court system. And so my guess is that it'll probably get torn down by the Supreme Court as well as any others that'll come in. Now, like I was saying, Harris held the town hall event with Charlemagne. And during that town hall event, okay, there were a lot of questions that were asked, and she here, well, in fact, here it is right here in her own words. This is, Harris's town hall event with Charlemagne got roasted in the comments, and she got roasted. She did. So they did a wide-ranging audio-only town hall, and Harris did a couple things, like left the door open for slavery reparations. Again, they're trying to buy these votes. They know that this stuff is probably not going to be constitutional when it finally gets to the Supreme Court, but they do it anyway. Now, there was a caller's question where she says, I am running to be president for all Americans. Oh, really? Yet you're sitting here talking about legalizing marijuana and giving black men loans, among other things, which, by the way, just to correct the record, she presided over the prosecution of close to 2,000 black men for marijuana crimes in California. Okay. So, she's going to be the president for all Americans. And what she did, of course, is she said that being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position in terms of my immediate plan. Okay, let's talk about reparations for a second. For just a second. I know that my family, based on my own looking back into my history and everything else, I know that my family did not arrive on the shores of this great country until the early 1900s. I'm talking about 1901, 1902, 1903, somewhere in there. Okay? They never owned slaves. They were never a part of the slavery because slavery was outlawed in America in 1865. And so, folks, why would I have to pay reparations? How are they going to figure this out? I mean, how am I going to pay reparations for something that my family, none of my family ever did? I don't owe anybody anything. I wasn't a part of the slave trade. My ancestors weren't part of the slave trade. And even if they were, it wouldn't matter because it's over. It's gone. It's done. It's in the history books. And there is not one single person who is in the United States today, that has ever owned slaves, legally owned slaves in America. Not one person. Now, the economists estimate that any reparations process would cost taxpayers, none of whom are directly responsible for slavery. Again, slavery's been done for a long time. It's over with. But it would cost taxpayers at least $14 trillion. Now, I want to remind people, we have a debt right now, a national debt that's at $36 trillion. We're bringing in roughly $4 trillion in revenues. I don't see how we're going to be able to pay for that. Yeah, just not going to happen. Now, another point that was pressed upon during this Charlemagne thing, okay, was the administration's border failures. And I think this is part of the reason why she has such a problem with this. So Charlemagne asked, doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame. The first 3 years, all you did got a lot of things wrong. And here's what Kamala answered. No. We proposed mass amnesty on day one. No kidding. What do you think happened? That's exactly why the border was flooded, you freaking moron. And yes, she is a moron. She is a Marxist leftist moron. Oh my gosh. So anyway, despite going on the program to try and shore up support among the black community, Charlemagne actually did press her on actions that she took as district attorney, including reports that thousands of black men were locked up on drug charges, as I just mentioned. Harris responded and said, well, that's simply not true. And that's actually not true in terms of her answer is not true. Because she, according to the New York Post, she oversaw nearly 2,000 marijuana convictions between 2004 and 2011. So a listener also asked why the Biden-Harris administration is sending taxpayer money to foreign countries when we desperately need it in our own country for homeless housing, resources, for whatever. She replied, we can do it all, and we do. No, you can't. Obviously, you can't. Obviously, you can't do it because FEMA is only handing out $750 if you qualify. Yeah. And of course, she went on a tangent during that question. She went on a tangent about how the administration has brought down prescription drug costs, invested in historically black colleges and universities, child tax credits, small businesses, blah, 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 blah. Anyway. So after it was over, there were several people in the comments, over 15,000 comments, folks, that called her out for being the worst VP in history. Now, I got a question for you. You go on to a show or do a town hall with somebody who is a huge... let's say, a huge podcaster for the black community, in particular, the black males who would be listening to his broadcast. And you have 15,000 comments that are calling her out. Do you really think that's like helping your situation? She did not answer the questions very well. She does not do well in these situations. She just doesn't. She's the worst VP in history. She can't speak off script extemporaneously like I am doing right now. She can't. It is impossible for her to do that. It is impossible because she is a complete moron. She doesn't know the issues. She doesn't have the brain power to know the issues. She doesn't even attend her own briefings at times, according to past reports from people coming out of her office. You know, that 92% of turnover rate in her own office, where they were complaining about the fact that she goes into meetings without getting briefed about what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, all of that. Well, we had another person, and speaking of not having a brain, she would need to have a brain in order to be able to write a book without plagiarizing, which apparently she couldn't do because of the fact that her book in 2009 brought it up. Now, I told you about this a couple days ago, or a couple episodes ago, where there was a individual who went and evaluated that book and was able to find a good portion of it with like whole paragraphs, not just a sentence or two here and there, but whole paragraphs taken from other sources without crediting those sources and calling them out, you know, giving them credit for it. Well, it turns out that even the New York Times has picked up on this, because here in Red State, to be clear, that is plagiarism, which is a quote from a New York Times expert and he revises his analysis of Kamala's book, Scandal. So, Wednesday, so basically what ended up happening is Christopher Rufo, like I told you before, went ahead and busted her for this. He actually picked her up, picked the story up, and was able to run with it on X. And the mainstream media, mainstream, whatever, it mostly ignored him because they don't care about that. I mean, again, they don't care when it's a Democrat who does it. They don't care. Okay. But what ended up happening is that Rufo also found that the Times actually had withheld information from the so-called expert. So the Times apparently kind of like, so they held back. So this analyst that they held back about discussing it, okay, because they had an article or whatever, Jonathan Bailey revisited his analysis and he realized that, oops, this is worse than I thought. So then he was writing on Tuesday for Plagiarism Today. I didn't know there was actually a outfit like that. And even they say that in the article here. But it says, with it, here's what he said. With this new information, while I believe the case is more serious than I commented to the New York Times, the overarching points remain. While there are problems with the work, the pattern points to sloppy writing habits, not a malicious intent to defraud. Is this problematic? Yes. But it's also not the wholesale fraud that many have claimed it to be. It sits somewhere between what the two sides want it to be, is what he said. Now, yeah, it's plagiarism. That's all there is. So then he sticks to his weasel words and tries to, underplay or downplay it, I should say. And then he goes on to dismiss a number of Rufo's claims where he talks about it. He says, from there, the allegations do get more serious. The more serious allegation concerns Wikipedia. Harris' book contained roughly 2 paragraphs copied from Wikipedia without citation. To be clear, that is plagiarism. Well, no kidding. And then he goes, it's compounded by the fact that Wikipedia is typically not seen as a reliable source, and according to Weber, there was an error in the information. The selected quotes and the section quotes and cites a passage from the U.S. Bureau of Justice Assistance, but does not indicate that Wikipedia was actually used. But he just said the actual part out loud, which is that, to be clear, that is plagiarism. There it is. It's there. So, Joe Biden, again, like I pointed out in 1987, should have ended his career because he plagiarized speeches, lied about his academic achievements, and so on and so forth. That should have just ended it all. So, anyway. She is not having a very good week. Let's just put it that way. So, yeah, just having all kinds of issues. So anyway, sorry, tried to catch up a little bit on the chat here. So anyway, the point is that her campaign is spiraling, and Joe and Obama and all the rest, they all know it. They know it. They won't say it, but they know it. I mean, when you trot out Obama and when you trot out Clinton, of all people, oh my gosh, when you trot out Billy Boy Clinton, who, shot her in the foot as well. I don't think he actually meant to, but I think he ended up saying the quiet part in truth out loud with regards to Laken Riley, and that she would be alive today had the Biden-Harris administration actually vetted the people who came into this country, which, by the way, that kind of leads me to, I guess the administration finally did admit that they didn't do a very good job with vetting those people coming in. You think? But speaking about illegal aliens and non-citizens in particular, voting, okay? The federal government is now being sued by Florida. Now, keep in mind, the federal government is suing, I think it's Virginia, for trying to remove people from, or non-citizens from their voter rolls. The federal government is blocking other places from trying to remove non-citizens from their voter rolls. All this, by the way, all this prior to the election. And the reason being that they're doing this is because they literally want a safe and fair election. That's what they want. These states want to clean up these voter rolls. Well, Governor Ron DeSantis and his staff, and I say that only because of the fact that, you know, Florida is just probably, if not the best governed state in the union, probably up there, at least in the top 5. Okay. Florida is now suing the federal government, looking for data on what they call non-citizen voters. The lawsuit is alleging, and by the way, this is coming from the Epic Times in case I get caught for plagiarism. The lawsuit alleges the federal government isn't cooperating with Florida's efforts to purge non-citizens from its voter rolls. And we've seen this at other states as well. So anyway, Florida authorities on October 16th filed a suit against the U.S. government, alleging the U.S. officials are illegally refusing to cooperate with Florida's effort to remove non-citizens from its voter rolls. State law requires state authorities to maintain accurate voter registration records. Federal law requires the federal government to respond to those inquiries from federal, state, and local government agencies that are seeking to verify or ascertain the citizenship or immigration status of any individual within the jurisdiction of the agency. However, according to the suit, when the Florida Department of State asked U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for data on individuals whom Florida authorities identified as potentially being non-citizens who are registered to vote. Wait a minute, I thought that didn't happen. Anyway. The USCIS's director wrote back and said the agency could not offer any information that is not contained within the Systemic Alien Verification for Entitlements program. Florida authorities have access to the program, but say that it is insufficient to check all possible non-citizens, according to the suit, because the program requires officials to have biographical information and an immigration identification number in order to check a person's citizenship status. Without further information from DHS, Florida is unable to fulfill its statutory duties to ensure the integrity of its elections and maintain accurate voter registration records, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody and other state lawyers said in the complaint. Florida's inability to carry out its statutory obligations inflicts sovereign injury upon the state. The complaint was filed in federal court in Pensacola. Folks, the Biden-Harris administration, or the Harris-Biden administration, however you want to call it, okay, they are blocking every single effort to try and make this the cleanest and fairest election that we have had in a very long time. They are attempting to do everything possible. They are blocking things. They're having judges block things in Georgia. They're having judges attempt to block things in other places. Georgia has got like 7 of its electoral rules thrown out by a federal judge down there. And so now you're looking at things like this where they're stonewalling. They don't want this stuff to get cleaned up. And this is exactly why we need to get rid of Democrats completely in our organizations. We have got to get rid of these people because they are against America. They are against everything that is all well and good in this country. They're against it, and they need to get flushed out of the government system. The bureaucrats need to go. The only way to start that process is to vote Trump Vance in November for president, and any other Republican straight down ballot. Just get rid of all the Democrats on your list if you can. Well, I've got some really good news that broke just recently. Fantastic news, actually, especially for Israel. Here in the Epic Times also, and this is my last article for tonight. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been killed, according to Israel. The Israel military has confirmed that its troops in Gaza have killed Hamas's top leader, Yahya Sinwar, the chief architect of last year's October 7th attack. Folks, this is how you get shit done. This is exactly what needs to be done every single time. You show your enemies that you have power. That's it. You want to keep the bully from bullying you? You knock the bully out. There it is. They have done a fantastic thing here, and the whole world is much better for it. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free to sign up. And once you are there and signed in, make sure you hunt out the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to make sure you get notified every time that I go live. Also, too, before you take off, make sure you hit all those thumbs up buttons and like buttons and whatever other kinds of buttons there are across all my platforms, because, of course, that helps increase the rankings of these videos and allows me to expand my user base. Or my listener base, I should say. Not my user base, but my listener base. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. You guys have a great rest of your evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.